Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you, featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your very best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
This is the Susan Brender Show, and today my guest is Bruce Oliver, who's traveled everywhere in the U.S. except for one place, North Dakota, and to over 50 years, including the British Isles, Russia, Egypt, and China, on river cruise lines like the Ame Waterways and American Cruise Lines, on luxury cruise ships, and on escorted independent tours. I want to welcome Bruce Oliver to talk all about how that has made his life very, very special. Welcome to the Susan Brender Show, Bruce Oliver.
Good afternoon, Susan. How are you doing today?
You know, knowing that I'm going to talk to you about something I love makes me feel very good because I love to travel too. So, Bruce, tell me a little bit, give me one of the highlights of what you've done when you've traveled, and which place really made you feel so good?
Well, you know, every place that I've gone in the world, and now it's 53 countries, 6 continents, and I've enjoyed every single one of them for different reasons. But last week, I just got off of the an ocean cruise, 14 days, on the Crystal Symphony to Antarctica.
Oh.
Absolutely phenomenal and once-in-a-lifetime type of an event. Really, really enjoyed it for a number of reasons. First of all, there were a lot of speakers on board talking about the various places we were going to visit, historically as well as naturally what is happening there. We went to the end of the world. It's the furthest point south in South America that you can travel before getting to Cape Horn and the waterway, the Straits of the Drake Passage, which goes between Antarctica and South America. You know, there's a difference in elevation from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean of about 100 feet. So you can imagine the water rushing there as well as all the wind and everything else. So we went to Ushuaia and Terra del Fuego, and that was the end of the world, the furthest point in the world that you can actually go on land. And then spent a couple of days in Antarctica, and you can imagine all the things that you see there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Bruce, I of course we can imagine, but tell us about it. What did you see, and how was it different from the rest of the world?
The Antarctic area is just an amazing area that has a series, well, unlike the North Pole, the South Pole has land under it. And there are mountain ranges as well as glaciers. Glaciers everywhere. And for 2 days we sailed through the various straits into port, the Palmer Ice Station, where the U.S. has a presence and a scientific team that's there all year round. Luckily, we were able to see them because the ice had melted. This is their summer is actually different than up north. Up in the northern hemisphere, this is the winter time. Down there, it's summer right now. Well, summer at 20 degrees.
Yeah.
So you see ice all over the place, and icebergs, a series of ice patches that are just water that is frozen, as well as the glaciers that have broken off, and you can see the amazing blue and white striations because the denser the ice gets, it becomes a blue color. So it's absolutely gorgeous. And one of the most incredible times during the passage and going through that area was a day that we passed a huge iceberg that was shaped like a concave dish, and it looked like a mountain on one side and a mountain on the other side, and there must have been 20 penguins on it. And they were walking to the top of the ice, and sliding down into the water. It was a riot to watch.
Oh, I bet.
So that was some of the wildlife we saw. We saw some whales, although whales only come up and, you can see the blowhole and then maybe the fins going into the water, but they don't stay on top of the water. Seals all over the place. It was just absolutely extraordinary. And everywhere you looked, there was water, icebergs, just an amazing area to travel to.
Yeah.
And we met scientific team from the Palmer Ice Station, and that's a U.S. presence. That's on the eastern side of Antarctica. Antarctica is a changing body of ice and land. In the summertime, the ice melts a little bit, although it was slower to melt this year. And then you've got glaciers that top to the top of the mountains. And in the winter, it goes all the way down to 70 degrees below zero.
Oh.
So it's a very, very tough place to be in the winter. We were there, it was around 20 degrees to 30 degrees.
Tolerable,
and if there was
right?
wind chill, it went down below zero. But it was just absolutely gorgeous. And the Symphony is a Crystal cruise ship. Not many people know about Crystal. It's a high-end cruise line that has 922 passengers on it. And the front of the bow on the deck 11, which is above the bridge, there was this huge room, and you could see all of the ice and all of the places that we were going to go to, as well as some of the places we came from. Just absolutely amazing.
Now,
and
Bruce,
that was the highlight of one of the trip there.
So this is not a scientific question. It's just a question that I have to ask you, and that is, do you believe that we're in a time where the icebergs are melting and this is going to be a real problem for us?
This question came up actually with one of the scientists, and the leader of the expedition said, he kind of shrugged it off. In a way he shrugged it off, in a way he didn't. They said, what about global warming? And he said, well, let me tell you, the western side of Antarctica is actually getting more glacier. The glaciers are getting thicker.
So it's
on
a myth.
On the eastern side, the Atlantic side, that's the Pacific side. On the Atlantic side, the glaciers have gone down in size just a little bit. So on the Pacific side, they're increasing in volume. On the Atlantic side, they've decreased just a little bit. And he says, but the thing is, in the last few years, we've had a lot of ice build up because the ocean is frozen. And it's taken longer for the ice to melt. As a matter of fact, they were wondering whether or not they were going to be able to come to the ship and do the presentation because the ice prior to our getting there was too difficult to break through. So I believe, my personal belief as a former environmental scientist and forester, that we're in a cycle. And everything's a cycle, and whether we like it or not, it's going to do what it's going to do. But from the scientific side, he wouldn't commit one way or another.
That's very interesting because some people think it's a myth and other people think it's a reality, but as far as I know, it really is a myth. And so that's why I asked you that. Now, let's talk about something else, and that is the fact that vitality is my show is called the Susan Brender Show, but it really used to be called the V for Vitality. And so when people travel, and you do a lot of that, do you feel that it transforms you in ways that you can't even describe, that you feel vital, you feel excited, it changes your whole life, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, St. Augustine said, the world is a book. And if you have not traveled, it's like reading only one page of the book. I think that if more people traveled, they would see some of the other cultures, which is great. because it's great to see the way other people live, their foods, etc., and their history. And coming back home, you appreciate more of what you've got, especially in the United States. We're so blessed here. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is I believe that these cultures like where they are. They don't want to have somebody come in and change them, nor should we. Mm-hmm. We should allow them to live their lives. And some of the happiest people in the world are in third world nations.
Right.
I mean, they don't know what they've got or haven't got, and they're very happy with where they are. And this just brings to a point, several years, or maybe 15 years ago, I was in China, mm-hmm. and a group of us walked in Guilin, which is near the Li River, to a village that was close to the hotel. And there were about 100 young children, I'd say under 12 years of age, standing around somebody, we knew it was somebody, a table, and they were all laughing and watching intently on what was going on. Mm-hmm. And the closer we got to the table, we found out they were two children were playing mahjong.
We're playing mahjong.
The rest were watching. And they were having a ball watching. And they were all happy. And they were all smiling. And when they saw us come, they stopped and said hello, and they were all very happy to see us. But as we left, they turned around and continued to watch these two children, these two kids, play mahjong. Mm. And I said, boy, so simple. We've made things so complex. Do we really enjoy our lives? Do we, as somebody said to me years ago, take time to smell the roses wherever we are, right. Whether we're working somewhere or we're going somewhere? Do we take time to enjoy where we are at the moment? Mm-hmm. And I don't think a lot of people do enjoy where they are at the moment.
Yeah, so Bruce, in America we have so much. I mean, we have everything you could want, and it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor. There's just so very much. But now when you go around the world, and when you went around the world and you saw like two children playing mahjong, and if you went any other places where you would see them just helping their mothers, helping their fathers, farming, doing many things, do you think it's that we're spoiled? Don't you think we're spoiled?
Well, that's the other thing, and I was going to say that in a sense, we are spoiled. I always tell people, listen, when I was in Egypt, a lot of the people didn't have water. They had to go get their water, electricity. When you go home, and if the average person is at home, and they go to turn on their electric light, and the light doesn't go on, you're upset. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, if the power is off, you're on the phone to the power company.
Right.
What's going on here? But in some countries, that's just the normal thing. You got power or you don't have power. We turn on our water taps, and we expect water to come out, and we expect it to be clean, and we expect it to be flowing at a good rate, while as in other parts of the world, it doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. So I think if you travel, you appreciate that more. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is I always tell people, listen, you're in another culture. You're in another part of the world, and they have ways that they do things. And it brings to thought, we were in Hong Kong, mm-hmm. and in the bay where there was a fishing village. Well, the families lived on the boats that they fished from. And there were two children tied to a pole on the boat. Mm-hmm. And a couple of American women saw that and thought it was just terrible.
Right.
So they called the police.
Wow.
And the police came, and they started laughing. Well, the point is, the mother lashed these kids to the mast or to the pole, mm-hmm. because if she didn't, they might fall over and drown. Wow. And this is just normal for that part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So we take our mores and our ethics and we expect everybody else to live by the mores and the thoughts that we have, and they don't.
Right.
It just doesn't happen.
Now, are there places around the world or even in this country that haven't been explored yet?
There are some remote areas of the world that not a lot of people go to. I mean, Antarctica is one of them. But there are other parts of the world, the Amazon regions, the Patagonia, which is part of South America, and we visited that part. Ushuaia is there, and Puerto Madrid and Buenos Aires, that a lot of people just don't go to. Central
America?
Central Australia.
Ah.
Actually, Australia is mostly inhabited around the edge of the continent.
Mm-hmm.
Most people live around the edge of the continent. The Aborigines and some of the natives live within the center of Australia, but it's a very hard area to live in, so not a lot of people live there. Mm-hmm. And so you look at the Amazon River, you look at Patagonia, look at some parts of other parts of the world, they're still being studied.
Yeah.
And the biggest part of the world that hasn't been studied enough is the oceans.
Right. Now, when you talk about the oceans, have you seen the oceans change? Has there been much more destruction to the way that it used to be many years ago before they had all these giant cruises going through? Because the water seems so much more polluted all over the world now. Do you agree with me or not?
I haven't seen that. The cruise lines are very, very specific about they don't dump anything overboard. They hold everything and they process it on land before it's released. There is nothing sent overboard. No garbage is sent overboard. So there's a strict guidelines by the World Organization called the Cruise Line Industry Association that looks at all the ways that cruise lines operate,
mm-hmm.
and there's a whole bunch of guidelines and rules that are used. So probably years ago there was more dumped overboard than there is today.
Ah.
I don't think, and I don't have any scientific information to prove it or disprove it, I don't think there's more pollution today in the oceans. Now, there are some cultures and some countries in the world that have dumped their garbage because they don't have place for it on land.
Right.
That is slowing down, and that mostly happens in the Pacific, where barges have been sent out to the middle of the ocean and they've just dumped stuff.
Right.
The advanced civilization, though the advanced countries, the United States just doesn't allow stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the advanced organizations and countries in the world that have a place to process this material don't do it. They might have done it years ago, but they don't do it anymore.
Well, that's good news. Now, if someone were to call you for advice about taking their next vacation, what would you say?
Well, I want to find out what they do and what they like. You know, what makes you relax? Why are you going somewhere? Is it to relax? Is it for an adventure? Is it to find out something new? Is it to visit a new country or a land? I'd want to find out a little bit about where they've gone, what they've done. What do they consider? What would they consider a vacation? Where do they stay? Are you somebody that stays, if you go somewhere, do you stay in a Motel 6, or do you go to the Hyatt or to Marriott, or do you go to Fairmonts? What kind of places do you stay at?
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I'm able to, and who's going to be traveling? If you got children, you want activities for children.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole range of questions and dialogue. And I usually talk to somebody. As a matter of fact, somebody called me this past week and said, we're going on our first vacation. We'd like you to help us with this. We just got married last year. We haven't been anywhere. We've been working all year. Can you talk us through this? So I'm going to be talking to them about what their budget is. You know, everybody's got a different budget. And that is going to make a difference on where they can go and what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, cost effectively, I believe that river cruising and ocean cruising are by far the most cost-effective ways to travel today.
Mm-hmm. But Bruce, now let's talk about the possible recession that might take place. Will that change the number of people who travel? And if so, what will the travel business do? Because they're making all kinds of new ships that hold 10,000. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe 3, 4, 5,000. But the economy can really change the way people think about traveling, because it's so. You mentioned the Crystal tours, pretty expensive, isn't it?
The Crystal, well, you can go on a Crystal cruise for about $3,000 per person for a window view cabin, but that's all inclusive. You don't pay any gratuities. And if you drink, that includes all your liquor and beer and wine and hard drinks and mixed drinks. And the service. Mm-hmm. So, it all goes all the way up to $9,000 to $15,000 to $20,000 per person, depending upon the type of cabin. Now, there's no inside cabins there.
Right. Right.
They're all outside cabins.
Now, what about
they all have a view?
What about for young people? Because when you go on a cruise, you generally see a lot of older people, retired people. But what about the youth? What about young families? Do they travel too?
Yes. I had a family go first time ever last October. Still talking about it. They went on a cruise and I'm finding that, and what I try to do, especially with families, where are you in the country? How close are you to a cruise port? And then find out the cruises that are going out of the port that's closest to them. That reduces the time that you have to either drive or fly. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these people that are going out of the Northeast, which is a large population center, go out of New York, Baltimore, Boston, maybe Pennsylvania. Well, no, Baltimore mostly. Mm-hmm. So, and they go to anywhere from Bermuda up the coast of New England to the Caribbean, the Bahamas. Mm-hmm. If you do something down south, then you're probably going out of either Port Canaveral, Fort Lauderdale, or Miami. Families like the larger ships because there's so many activities for children. If you go on Royal Caribbean or you go on Norwegian or Princess, there's a lot of activities, spaces for children to be, children's pools and adult pools, Disney, high-end, but you get what you pay for. Mm-hmm. And they have Disney's Disney. I mean, you're going to pay for it, but you're going to know what you get, and it's a great value if you're able to pay for it. But prices for families on, let's say, a Norwegian cruise out of Boston would be inside cabin, midship, deck 4, and I'm doing this from memory because I just did something like this, $699 per person for the first two, and until the 31st of January, the third and fourth passengers go for free. Children went for free. So you have all your food. Mm-hmm. And the thing that Jack said, he was the one that went last October, still talking about it.
Yeah, so it's
the entertainment was there.
Right.
The all the activities for the kids are there. I mean, these large ships now, Breakaway, and some of the large ships from the Allure on Royal Caribbean have, climbing walls and this and that and something else and skating rinks and walkways over the water, and I mean, you name it, they've got it. Plus the entertainment, the pools, etc. Plus the different venues to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So if a child just wants hamburgers and hot dogs, go up on the Lido deck, get a hamburger, hot dogs, chips, go in the pool, mm-hmm. and you can go for a relatively good price.
Yeah. So you're saying that it's extremely affordable for families and other people, and that's one of the reasons why cruising is a great way to travel. Now, what do you say to people who say, well, who wants to go on a ship that has so many people that you feel that you're like a big crowd and you have to travel with so many people, and it's hard to have any privacy? Now, is that true, or what would you tell them? I mean, because I've heard that from a lot of people that they get off the boat and there they are with hundreds of people, and it's uncomfortable.
True. Well, then they have to change the type of ship they're on.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There are varieties of ships. The trend and the new cruisers are going to larger and larger ships, 3,000 to 5,000 passengers. But the generations and multi-generational travelers are going to Princess. There were multi-generational travelers on Crystal. Mm-hmm. In Cunard, I was on that in December, a transatlantic cruise from Southampton, England to New York City, and then from New York down to the Caribbean, back up to New York and over to Southampton again. And there were children on that. Mm-hmm. It's now the Queen Mary's a large ship, but if you go to the next ship down in size, the Queen Victoria, 2 years ago I was on the Queen Victoria to the Mediterranean, and there were a lot of children on that cruise. Mm-hmm. Smaller ship, smaller number of passengers. Not the huge ship where there's 3,000 to 5,000 passengers. A little bit different to cruise. You don't have the rock climbing walls and you don't have the skating rinks, but you have the movie theaters, you have the entertainment, you have the pools, you have the various eating venues. And this is the reason why I said initially, I sit down and talk to somebody. Mm-hmm. What do you do? Where you been? Why are you going? What kinds of things do you like to do? Are you doing something for culture? Do you mind the large crowds? If they mind the large crowds, I look at the different ship and a smaller ship. They're not all the huge ships. And there's a trend now. They're getting the large ships, and that's for the commodity and the large number of families that are going. The multi-generational people, grandparents, the parents and the grandchildren, are going on a smaller ship. Maybe they will be going on a large ship, but I find that they go on Princess. There's a huge number of multi-generational travelers on that, mm-hmm. On the Princess cruises. And they're not the huge ships. Now, Princess has got the Regal and the Royal. I mean, extremely large. So it depends. And I would put somebody on a ship that meets their needs. Mm-hmm. So there are a variety of ships.
Right.
And there are ships also that have 90 passengers to 120 passengers.
Yeah. But I suppose those ships are pretty expensive. But anyway, we're at the last moment of the show, and if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Well, there's a couple of ways they can look for me. One is go to my website, and I'll give you the one that's the most popular, cruisewithbruce.com. Or do a Google or Yahoo or a dog pile search for Cruise with Bruce. You're going to find me there. Virtual Luxury Network, virtualluxury.net is another way. Or just call me, 877-749-7128.
Okay. Well, my guest today has been Bruce Oliver, who's traveled everywhere in the world virtually. And I want to thank you, Bruce Oliver, for telling people how they can get a really wonderful experience taking cruises and how they will stay very vital. So thank you, Bruce, for being on the Susan Brender Show.
Happy sailing.
Thank you for listening to The Susan Brender Show. To be a guest, email sebrender@yahoo.com.